Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Haley always believed she had won the love lottery. Her marriage to Brian was light, complicit and true. They laughed together at the simplest things, made long-term plans, dreamed of having kids and a house in the country where they would grow old side by side. Brian was the kind of man who made her coffee before leaving for work, who decorated important dates and who never went to sleep without saying, "I love you." And Haley returned with the same intensity. She made it a point to show admiration for him, supported his projects, left notes in pockets or mirrors, cultivating every day what united them. There were no serious fights, past affairs, or suspicions. The marriage was stable, sweet and mature. The promotion at work came as a blessing. Finally, after years of effort and dedication, Haley was recognized with a coordination position at one of the largest engineering companies in the country. With the new role came frequent travel. That was the only negative point of the new phase. Brian supported from the beginning, always encouraging, saying that she deserved every achievement. And she moved forward confidently, certain that her home base was solid. By company policy, coordinators weren't allowed to travel alone. That's why Travis started accompanying her. An experienced engineer, easy on the tongue, always kind and good-humored, Travis was an efficient work partner admired by all. He often talked about his wife, Amanda, with whom he had been married for almost a decade, and his young daughter, who seemed to be the center of his world. His stories at informal meetings usually involved some affectionate gesture from his wife or some funny mischievous act from his daughter. You could feel that he valued his family very much. That's why Haley never saw him as a threat. In the first 4 trips, the contact between them was light and professional. They shared spreadsheets, presented proposals, and dined after events like civilized colleagues. They laughed a lot, talked about work, series, travels and food. Haley even mentioned to Brian how helpful Travis was. And Brian never showed jealousy. He trusted her completely, as he always did. But on the 5th trip, things changed. The event was in Chicago. The schedule had been intense since early morning. After hours in meetings, the two decided to have dinner at the hotel restaurant. They ordered wine, toasted to the closing of an important contract and stayed longer than usual. The conversation flowed more freely, less filtered. Travis told about a difficult moment from the past with his wife, when they almost separated because of a financial crisis. Haley was moved. In response, she shared an old fear, the fear of losing herself while pursuing success. They understood each other there, at that vulnerable point, when they lowered their defenses and stopped being just work colleagues. After a few more glasses, they walked back together down the silent corridor. Neither of them said anything, but also nobody backed away. When they reached Haley's room door, she hesitated. Travis stopped. They looked at each other for a few seconds. Then, in a way almost silently, they entered together. It was fast. Without promises, without real affection, without the weight of a romance. It was as if both were trying to fill a temporary need, anesthetize some hidden pain. Haley woke up with a tight heart, still shocked by what had happened. When she looked around, Travis was already getting dressed. With a low gaze and tense shoulders, he just said, "That was a mistake. I'm sorry, Haley. That shouldn't have happened." He left and closed the door without waiting for a response. Hours later, she found out that he had advanced the flight. He didn't return to the event. Cancelled everything, took a taxi directly to the airport and boarded home as if fleeing could erase what they had done. Haley, on the other hand, remained there. With the body present and the mind in collapse. She felt as if she had fallen into an abyss without understanding how. It was as if she had lost something she didn't even know was at risk. The room seemed colder. Every corner now seemed judgmental. It wasn't just the physical betrayal. It was the breaking of everything she believed about herself. Brian didn't deserve that. Amanda didn't deserve that. But even taken over by guilt, Haley still tried to understand how everything unraveled so quickly. And the most painful part, how Travis could leave like that, as if she were just another mistake to be forgotten. The silence in the room lasted longer than necessary. Haley remained seated on the bed, looking at the closed door, as if simply looking at it would be able to make Travis return and undo what they had done. The tangled sheet on her legs, the dress on the floor, the smudged makeup. Nothing made sense. She breathed deeply, trying to understand when she lost control of her own story. Everything seemed a dirty dream, as if she had been torn from her real life and thrown into a distorted version of herself. For years, she built her reputation based on conscious choices, ethical stance, respect for others. And there she was, in the middle of a hotel room, hoping no one had seen Travis leaving through her door. She tried to take a shower, cool her head, but the water running over her skin only served to accentuate the feeling of dirt. She felt broken. It was as if she had broken something precious inside herself, something she hadn't realized she carried until the moment she lost it. Looking at her reflection in the mirror, she saw a woman who could no longer sustain the pride she had always had for herself. The one who was proud of her own trajectory, the solid partnership with her husband, the values she claimed to cultivate. Everything seemed to have slipped between her fingers in minutes. Still at the hotel, she called Brian as usual, but her voice tone gave something different away. He didn't notice. He spoke excitedly about the weekend they were planning, commented that he had already bought her favorite wine. She smiled lightly, unable to say anything relevant. She wanted to tell, wanted to confide, but was paralyzed. They ended the call with declarations of love, as if everything was normal, as if what had happened hours ago didn't exist. And this contrast between what she lived and what he believed destroyed her more than the mistake itself. The next day, she finished the professional event with a controlled face, pretending everything was in order. She got on the plane back as if fulfilling another routine mission. But inside, her chest was chaos, regret and fear. She tried to convince herself that she could deal with it alone. When she arrived home, she forced a smile, hugged Brian and did her best to look like the same woman before. Talked about the event, gave the gift she brought, sat at the table as if she was whole. But each of his gestures, each affectionate word, tightened the knot forming inside her. She felt small in front of the sincere love he offered without knowing what had happened. And that was exactly what hurt the most. Back at work, Travis didn't appear. She found out by email that he had requested a transfer to another unit of the company. The justification was vague, just said he needed a new professional challenge. That hit her strangely. If on one hand it relieved the weight of meeting him again, on the other it exposed how disposable she had been. Travis continued his life without looking back. He didn't send messages, didn't write anything, didn't show concern about what she would face from then on. It was as if everything had been deleted, as if she was the reminder of a mistake he wanted to erase as soon as possible. The company environment also began to seem different. Even though no one knew, Haley felt watched. It was an invisible guilt, but suffocating. In the corridors, greetings seemed shorter. During meetings, she avoided looking people in the eye. She started working more hours, as if the effort could compensate for what she had done. She volunteered for extra projects, accepted responsibilities outside the scope, filled her agenda to avoid free time, because free time brought thoughts, and thoughts brought pain. At home, Brian continued to be the loving and attentive man he always was. But now, each of his gestures hurt. When he hugged her, she felt the weight of the deception. When he prepared dinner and left her favorite dish on the table, her stomach turned. When he excitedly talked about the names they chose for the children in the future, she could only think that she had stained what they had purest. And although she tried to act naturally, her body betrayed her. She had difficulty sleeping, woke up in the middle of the night sweating, reliving the scene in the hotel like a movie that didn't allow pause. On one of those days, she decided to write a letter. Not to deliver, but to try to organize her feelings. She wrote about how lost she felt, about the fear of destroying everything, about the shame she felt every time she looked at Brian. She poured out that she missed the lightness they had before, the innocence with which they planned the future. When she finished, she tore it all up. She felt that no apology would solve it. And yet, she lived each day as if it were a test of endurance. The awareness that no one knew gave the illusion of control. But Haley understood that she was living in countdown. That the truth, even silent, excavated the walls of the soul until it found an exit. And little by little, she began to notice that her energy to maintain the facade was running out. Smiles came with effort, words with delay. Even her mother noticed she seemed distant. She disguised it by saying that work was too demanding. And it was. But it wasn't just that. What was corroding her was the fact of knowing that, despite all the love for Brian, she had given in. Not for lack of character, but for weakness, for need, for a moment in which she let herself be carried by something she didn't even know existed within her. And the worst, she didn't know how to fix it. Brian didn't deserve to be betrayed, not even in thought. But he had been. And the weight of this invisible crime, committed by a woman who always took pride in being correct, pushed her into an abyss where forgiveness seemed unattainable. Even trying to move forward, something inside her had already broken forever. It was a common Sunday afternoon. The house was quiet, the smell of coffee still lingered in the kitchen, and Brian was organizing some papers on the dining room table. Haley flipped through a magazine, faking attention while her mind wandered. Both were in the same environment, but in completely different worlds. Until the phone rang. Brian answered without looking at the number. "Yes, it's me. Go ahead." The voice on the other end of the line caused his expression to change in seconds. His face became pale, his shoulders stiffened, and his eyes immediately searched Haley's, who was watching him straight. She noticed the shock, but didn't have time to ask anything. Brian remained there, still, staring at Haley as if he had just discovered that he was living with a stranger. But that call didn't come out of nowhere. A day before, on Saturday, Travis' confession had exploded inside his own home. He tried to hide, but he could no longer pretend. Amanda was used to his emotional absences in recent times, but still believed he was just overwhelmed. That night, after putting their daughter to sleep, Travis asked her to sit down. His look already said something serious was coming. Amanda thought it was some problem at work. She never imagined she would hear Haley's name from her husband's mouth. Travis confessed. Straightforward, he said that during the last trip, the two went to bed. Said it was a mistake, that he regretted it, that afterwards they drifted apart, but that the guilt suffocated him. Amanda listened with a fixed face. Inside, each word was like a punch. When he finished, she just got up and went to the bedroom. Locked the door without saying anything. Travis slept on the couch, in silence, hugging his remorse. The next morning, Amanda had breakfast alone, without talking to him. But her head was boiling. So that same afternoon, and with the cell phone in hand, she made the decision that would transform another house besides hers. She researched Brian's name on social media, and found his cell number on Facebook. Brian. She knew that call would be like lighting a match inside a barn full of hay, but she felt she needed it. That the minimum justice, given the infidelity, would be to allow the other side to know the truth. From the other side of the line, Brian heard everything in silence. Amanda was direct, without beating around the bush or creating scenes. She said what she needed to say and, at the end, apologized for destroying something that wasn't hers. After hanging up, Brian didn't move. He stayed there, sitting, with the cell phone in his hand and the chest in pieces. When he looked at Haley, his voice was low but cutting. "You have something to tell me?" She froze. Her eyes widened, and her skin lost color. She tried to deny, stuttered some loose words, but the truth was already flowing through her gaze. In seconds, the lie lost strength. Brian stepped back a bit, and they sat on the sofa where they had dreamed together many times. She cried before even starting to speak. Confessed. Said it was a moment of weakness, that she regretted it right after, that she never saw Travis again, that she wished she could go back in time and undo everything. But Brian barely managed to listen. What hurt him wasn't just what happened, but what came after. She came back from the trip, slept beside him, told him she loved him, made plans for the weekend as if everything was intact. This farce destroyed him more than the mistake itself. Without raising his voice, without dramatizing, he just asked, "Pack your things." And with this simple sentence, he closed the most beautiful chapter of the two of their lives. Haley gathered some clothes, put them in the suitcase not knowing what to bring. No piece made sense. At the door, she turned to him as if asking for a last chance, but he looked away. There, in the cruelest silence she had ever known, she understood that some truths have the force of a hurricane. Even when said with sincerity, they destroy what seemed unshakable. And on that Sunday that seemed like any other, everything ended. Haley spent the first nights in a simple hotel, near work. It was as far as she could get from the house where she lived the best years of her life and, at the same time, as close as possible to the routine she could still sustain. During the day, she performed her functions excellently. At night, she faced the ceiling of the room, trying to understand how she was capable of destroying everything she loved the most. She tried to call Brian. Sent messages, wrote emails. But he didn't even respond. He was determined. The man who once made her coffee now didn't want to hear her voice. The divorce went quickly, without fights, without arguments, without chance of reconciliation. Brian signed the papers with the same coldness with which he had sent her out of the house. He didn't want explanations. And that hurt even more. Haley carried the weight of not having even had the opportunity to rebuild or fix what she broke. And despite everything, she continued at the company. She needed something that still made sense, something that hadn't been contaminated by everything that happened. As for Travis, the story took another turn. After the initial shock, Amanda decided to try to rebuild the marriage. She forgave her husband, but nothing went back to what it was before. The climate between them became heavy. The conversations, short. The complicity, injured. Amanda imposed a clear condition: he would have to leave the company. That was where everything had started, and she couldn't stand the idea of Travis crossing the same hallways, even if Haley was far from him. He agreed. He resigned and got a job at another company. He distanced himself from everything, including his closest colleagues. He disappeared discreetly, like someone trying to bury the past. Years passed. Haley remained firm. She climbed the corporate ladder, took on new projects, gained the respect of the entire board. Over time, she was promoted to director of projects, the highest position she had ever held. Her career became an example. Many saw her as an admirable leader, strong, tireless. But behind the efficiency was a cautious heart. She attended events, smiled at parties, but avoided deep involvements. She refused dating invitations, fled possibilities. She never shared her life with anyone again. After the fall, she built walls so high that no one else could climb them. And even surrounded by achievements, sometimes at night, lying alone in her bed, she missed something that titles and bonuses didn't fill. And the emptiness, even subtle, still lived there. On a sunny Saturday, Haley decided to visit her mother. It had been weeks since she had promised to go there, but she always found an excuse: too much work, an urgent delivery, a last-minute meeting. This time, she woke up with a sincere desire to leave home, breathe other air and hear the familiar voice that always brought her peace. After breakfast with her mother, she decided to take a walk around the neighborhood and, without thinking much, followed the path of the park she used to frequent with Brian. It was almost instinctive. Her feet seemed to guide her to that place as if time wanted to show her something. When she arrived, she felt her stomach twist. The park was full, with families scattered on the grass and children running between the trees. She walked slowly, observing everything with a mix of nostalgia and distance. That's when, in the distance, she saw a man crouched, holding a little girl's hands, helping her climb the slide. A little behind, a boy with light hair laughed loudly while throwing a ball towards a couple. The man turned, and Haley recognized immediately. It was Brian. She stood still for a few seconds. Time seemed to slow down. Beside him, a woman with a light expression watched him smiling. She seemed calm, secure, like someone who knows exactly the place she occupies in someone's life. Haley didn't feel envy. Nor did she feel anger. She only felt a silent pang of nostalgia. They looked happy. Simply happy. That was enough. For a moment, she imagined what it would be like if she had made different choices. If she had controlled that night, if she had had the courage to tell before, if she had asked for help. But what passed, passed. She didn't approach. Didn't call, didn't wave, didn't try to be seen. She stayed at a distance, like a hidden memory among trees and children's laughter. And there, in that meaningful silence, she noticed something unexpected. When she turned to go away, she felt a tightness in her chest, but it was different. It wasn't guilt. It was relief. It was like the weight was finally sliding off her shoulders. Life had moved on. For Brian, for Travis, for Amanda. And now, it could move on too. That afternoon, for the first time in many years, Haley cried. But these weren't tears of pain. It was a calm cry, clean, like someone accepting scars and deciding to stop reopening wounds. She cried for everything she lived, for everything she lost, but also for everything she learned. After that, she wiped her eyes and smiled. A small smile, but genuine. There, in the middle of the park that had once been the setting of so many dreams, she finally understood, her freedom would never come from Brian's approval, nor from Amanda's forgetfulness or Travis's absence. It would come from the moment she looked inside and firmly said, "You made a mistake, but you learned." And that day, in the silence of an ordinary afternoon, Haley forgave herself. For the first time, she was free. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.